With your soulmate, this connection was written deeper than you ever realized, and the reason this feels heavier than anything you've known before is not because it was meant to hurt you, but because it was meant to awaken parts of you that nothing else ever could. There are connections that pass through your life lightly, teaching simple lessons and leaving gentle memories, and then there are connections that arrive already etched into your nervous system, stirring emotions you didn't know how to name, asking questions you never planned to answer. This is one of those. If you've ever wondered why this bond feels impossible to explain, why distance doesn't erase it, why silence doesn't kill it, why even growth hasn't loosened its grip, it's because this connection was not built on circumstance alone. It was built on recognition. Something in you recognized something in them before your mind ever caught up, and that recognition left a mark. You didn't imagine the depth. You didn't exaggerate the intensity. Your body felt it before logic could soften it. And that's why this connection keeps resurfacing in quiet moments, when you're calm, when you're grounded, when you're not trying to romanticize anything. It shows up because it lives deeper than desire. It lives in memory you didn't consciously create. You may have tried to make sense of it, tried to compare it to other relationships, tried to rationalize why it didn't follow a simple timeline or an easy arc, but this was never meant to be simple. It was meant to change how you love, how you choose, how you listen to yourself. What makes this bond different is not how intense it felt at the beginning, but how it continued to shape you even when things became unclear. You grew because of it. You questioned yourself because of it. You learned restraint because of it. And those lessons didn't come to punish you. They came to prepare you. This connection asked you to slow down, to feel deeply without control, to face parts of yourself that preferred certainty over truth. And that's why it stayed with you. Not because it was unresolved, but because it was unfinished in its purpose. Some connections are not meant to last in form, but they last in impact. They press on your emotional patterns until you outgrow them. They bring your attachment wounds to the surface so you can finally see them. They show you where you overgive, where you wait too long, where you confuse intensity with safety. And once you see those things, you can never unsee them. That is what makes this bond feel sacred and painful at the same time. You weren't just loving another person. You were meeting yourself through them. That's why it felt familiar in a way you couldn't explain. That's why the pull wasn't loud but constant. That's why even when you tried to move on, something inside you stayed aware. Not longing, not obsession, but awareness. A knowing that this connection had already changed your emotional language. You don't love the same way you did before. You don't attach the same way you did before. You don't tolerate the same uncertainty you once did. And that didn't happen randomly. It happened because this bond rewired you at a deeper level. You were meant to learn how to feel without losing yourself. You were meant to learn that love does not require self-abandonment. You were meant to learn that emotional depth must be matched by emotional availability. And these lessons don't come from easy connections. They come from the ones that sit with you, that challenge you, that refuse to be reduced to simple answers. If you're honest with yourself, you'll notice that this connection didn't just bring emotion, it brought awareness. You became more conscious of your needs. More sensitive to your body's signals. More aware of when something felt off even if it looked fine on the surface. That awareness is not a burden. It's a gift. Even if it came through confusion. Even if it came through waiting. even if it came through letting go of illusions. This bond was written deep enough to change how you relate to yourself, and that is why it mattered. Not every soulmate connection is meant to be lived in partnership. Some are meant to recalibrate you so that when true alignment arrives, you are capable of receiving it without fear. You are no longer the person you were before this connection, and that is not something to regret. It means you listened. It means you felt. It means you grew. And whatever comes next in your life will meet a version of you that understands emotional truth, not just emotional intensity. This connection carved space inside you for something more honest, more stable, more mutual. And whether or not this person remains part of your future, the imprint they left was not accidental. It was part of a deeper design meant to wake you up to the kind of love you can no longer settle without. There comes a moment when you realize this connection did not deepen because of time spent together, but because of what it awakened inside you when nothing was happening at all. That realization doesn't arrive loudly. It settles slowly, like a truth you can finally breathe with. You may notice it when you are alone, calm, not missing them the way you once did, yet still aware of the imprint they left on how you feel, how you trust, how you listen to yourself. This message is for you because that awareness is not attachment lingering, it is understanding arriving. Your heart needs this right now because many people confuse depth with dependency, but this bond was never about needing someone to survive emotionally. It was about learning how deeply you are capable of feeling without disappearing in the process. That lesson stays even when the person is no longer at the center of your thoughts. You didn't hold on because you were weak. You held on because something unfinished was still working its way through you. Not unfinished love, unfinished clarity. And clarity does not come on demand. It comes when you are ready to receive it without self-blame. This connection forced you to sit with unanswered questions longer than you wanted to, and in doing so, it exposed where you relied on certainty to feel safe. You learned that safety cannot come from another person's consistency alone. It has to come from your relationship with yourself. That is why this bond lingered. It wasn't punishing you. It was teaching you to stand without leaning too far forward. You may have noticed that since this connection entered your life, your tolerance for surface-level intimacy has dropped. Conversations that once felt exciting now feel hollow. Emotional availability without depth feels insufficient. You are no longer impressed by charm or intensity alone. That shift did not happen by accident. It happened because this bond trained your nervous system to recognize authenticity even when it was uncomfortable. And once your system learns that language, it cannot unlearn it. You may wonder why it took so long to feel peace around this connection, why it didn't resolve quickly, why it didn't end cleanly or turn into something stable. But some connections are not designed to resolve on a timeline. They are designed to mature you. They stretch your emotional capacity so that later, when you meet alignment, you don't confuse calm with boredom or consistency with lack of passion. This bond rewired your expectations. You no longer chase emotional highs at the cost of inner balance. You no longer equate longing with love. You understand now that love that costs you your center is not love meant to stay. That understanding didn't come from theory. It came from living inside a connection that felt profound yet incomplete. And that incompleteness forced you to choose yourself repeatedly, even when you didn't want to. Each time you chose yourself, you strengthened something inside you. Even when it felt like loss, it was actually integration. You were integrating self-respect into your capacity to love. That is rare. Most people learn to love deeply but never learn how to stop abandoning themselves in the process. You did. And that is why this bond mattered. It didn't just touch your heart, it refined it. You are more honest now. More attuned. More aware of when something feels right or off before your mind tries to explain it away. This connection sharpened your intuition because it demanded that you listen to it or suffer the consequences of ignoring it. You may have tried at times to force the connection into a shape that felt safer, hoping effort could replace alignment. But effort without reciprocity always reveals itself eventually. That revelation was painful, but it was also necessary. It taught you that love is not proven through endurance. It is proven through mutual presence. And that truth now lives in your body, not just your thoughts. You don't need to remind yourself of it. You feel it. That is why your standards changed quietly. You didn't announce them. You simply stopped engaging in dynamics that required you to shrink, wait indefinitely, or doubt your worth. This connection trained you to notice those dynamics early. That is its gift. You may still feel a tenderness when you think of them, but it is no longer rooted in wanting something from them. It is rooted in gratitude for what the connection revealed about you. Gratitude does not mean you would choose the same experience again. It means you can honor what it gave you without needing it to continue. That is emotional maturity. And that maturity did not come cheaply. It came through patience, confusion, hope, disappointment, and eventually, clarity. You are not behind in love because this connection did not become what you imagined. You are ahead, because it taught you discernment. You now know the difference between depth and durability. You know that emotional resonance must be matched by emotional responsibility. And because you know that, you will no longer settle for love that feels intense but unstable. This bond recalibrated your emotional compass. It pointed you inward first, so that when the right connection appears, you recognize it not by how strongly it pulls you, but by how safely it holds you. That is what it means for a connection to be written deep. It changes your internal structure. It doesn't just pass through your life. And you don't need to romanticize the pain to honor the lesson. You only need to acknowledge that you are not the same person you were before, and that the version of you that exists now is more capable of receiving the love that will not ask you to lose yourself again. There is a quiet moment when you realize this connection did not stay with you because it was unresolved, but because it rewrote how you recognize truth. Not loud truth, not dramatic truth, but the kind that settles into your chest and changes how you respond to love forever. This message is for you because that realization often arrives when you are no longer longing, no longer waiting, no longer hoping for anything to return. It arrives when you are stable, grounded, and living your life again, and suddenly you understand why this bond felt different from the beginning. Your heart needs this right now because you may have questioned yourself for how deeply this affected you, wondering why it lingered longer than other connections, why it didn't fade the way logic said it should. But this connection was not meant to fade quietly. It was meant to leave an imprint strong enough to guide your future choices. You may notice now that you don't chase reassurance the way you once did. You don't ask for emotional explanations that feel forced. You don't feel the urge to prove your value through patience or endurance. That change didn't come from willpower. It came from experience. This bond showed you, over time, how it feels to be emotionally engaged without being emotionally held. And once you felt that difference clearly, your nervous system learned something it cannot forget. You learned that love must feel steady in the body, not just exciting in the mind. And that awareness is not something everyone develops. It was cultivated through this connection, slowly, sometimes painfully, but thoroughly. Listen carefully, because the depth of this bond was never about romance alone. It was about exposure. It exposed where you overgave. It exposed where you waited too long. It exposed where you confused emotional intensity with emotional safety. And while that exposure hurt, it also freed you. You can't unknow what you now know about yourself. You know how it feels to be half-chosen. You know how it feels to live inside emotional ambiguity. And because you know that, you are no longer available for it. This message is for you because that shift is not accidental. It is the direct result of a connection that demanded growth rather than comfort. You may remember moments when this bond felt almost spiritual, as if it bypassed logic and went straight to something ancient inside you. That wasn't fantasy. That was recognition. But recognition does not always mean permanence. Sometimes it means preparation. Sometimes it means this person arrived to unlock something in you that you could not access alone. And once unlocked, it was your responsibility to carry it forward, not to wait for them to finish the journey with you. That understanding can feel bittersweet, because it honors the connection without tying your future to it. Your heart needs this right now because you may still feel moments of tenderness, moments of reflection, moments where you sense how deeply this bond shaped you. That doesn't mean you're stuck. It means you're integrated. Integrated experiences don't disappear. They inform. They guide. They soften you where you were once guarded and strengthen you where you were once too flexible. This connection did both. It softened your heart and strengthened your boundaries. And that combination is rare. You may notice that since this connection, your intuition has become sharper. You sense misalignment sooner. You feel when something is off without needing evidence. You trust your internal signals more than external promises. That trust was earned here. It was earned through moments where words didn't match energy, where presence felt inconsistent, where your body reacted before your mind could explain why. Those moments trained you. And training is not wasted time. It's preparation. Listen gently, because this bond also changed how you experience silence. Silence no longer automatically means abandonment. It no longer sends you into panic or overthinking. Instead, silence has become informative. It shows you who can remain present without constant stimulation and who cannot. That discernment came from living inside a connection where silence carried weight. You learned how to sit with it without collapsing. And that skill will serve you for the rest of your life. This message is for you because you are no longer seeking someone to complete you. You are seeking someone who can meet you where you already stand. That desire did not exist before this connection. Before, you may have believed that love required effort, compromise, and endurance above all else. Now, you understand that love also requires clarity, availability, and choice. And choice must be made freely, not extracted through patience. You may look back and realize that this bond arrived during a time when you were ready to grow, even if you didn't know it consciously. It challenged your patterns. It disrupted your expectations. It refused to fit neatly into your plans. And because of that, it forced you to adapt internally. Adaptation is uncomfortable, but it is how evolution happens. This connection was an evolutionary point in your emotional life. Your heart needs this right now because you may still be integrating the final layer of this lesson. The layer that says you can honor a deep connection without staying attached to its outcome. You can respect what it gave you without needing it to continue. You can hold gratitude without holding on. That balance is emotional mastery. And mastery does not come from easy love. Listen carefully, because the reason this connection was written deep is not to keep you tied to the past. It was to prepare you for a future where love does not confuse you, where connection does not destabilize you, where intimacy feels calm instead of consuming. You are now capable of recognizing that kind of love when it appears. You won't mistake chaos for chemistry. You won't mistake longing for destiny. You won't mistake intensity for depth. This message is for you because the universe does not waste experiences. Every connection that enters your life serves a purpose. Some stay to build a life. Others stay to build you. This one built you. And because of that, its impact will last far longer than its form. You don't need to relive it. You don't need to analyze it endlessly. You only need to trust that the version of you standing here now is more grounded, more aware, and more capable of receiving the love that will not ask you to lose yourself. Take a breath here. Let that settle. This chapter did not end in failure. It ended in formation. And formation is what allows alignment to find you when you are ready to receive it without fear. There is a moment when you realize this connection did not just touch your emotions, it reshaped your inner timing. Not the timing of events, but the timing of how quickly you give, how slowly you trust, how carefully you open now. This message is for you because before this bond, you may have moved faster toward attachment, faster toward hope, faster toward believing that feeling something deeply meant it should be secured immediately. But after this connection, something changed. You learned how to pause without shutting down. You learned how to feel without rushing toward resolution. And that lesson settled into you quietly. Your heart needs this right now because that pause was not delay, it was discernment being born. You may notice that you no longer feel pressure to define things prematurely. You don't need instant clarity to feel okay. You don't need constant reassurance to stay grounded. That doesn't mean you stopped valuing commitment. It means you stopped forcing timelines that weren't supported by reality. This connection taught you that rushing love does not make it safer, it makes it fragile. And fragility is what you are no longer willing to build on. You learned to let things reveal themselves at their natural pace, even when that pace was uncomfortable. That patience was not passive. It was self-protective. Listen carefully, because the depth of this bond also taught you the difference between emotional urgency and emotional truth. Urgency feels loud, anxious, demanding. Truth feels steady, quiet, and persistent. Early on, this connection may have triggered urgency in you, a desire to lock it in, to understand it fully, to hold on to it before it slipped away. But over time, urgency softened. What remained was truth. Truth about how it felt to wait. Truth about how it felt to love without clarity. Truth about what that did to your body, your thoughts, your peace. And once truth settles in the body, it does not leave. Your heart needs this right now because you may still be integrating the way this bond recalibrated your sense of timing in love. You are no longer impressed by fast intensity. You are no longer comforted by immediate promises. You are paying attention to consistency, follow-through, emotional availability over time. This shift didn't come from theory or advice. It came from lived experience. And lived experience carries more weight than anything else. You now trust slowness when it feels grounded, and you recognize delay when it feels avoidant. That discernment is one of the most valuable gifts this connection gave you. You may remember moments when you waited longer than you wanted to, telling yourself that understanding and compassion were acts of love. And sometimes they are. But you also learn that compassion without reciprocity becomes self-sacrifice. This bond showed you where your compassion crossed into self-neglect. That realization may have been painful, but it was necessary. You cannot build a future on one person's patience alone. Love must meet you halfway in time, not just in feeling. Listen gently, because this connection also changed how you experience anticipation. Anticipation used to feel exciting, full of hope and imagination. But through this bond, anticipation began to feel heavy, charged with uncertainty. And you learned to listen to that shift. You learned that excitement without grounding eventually turns into anxiety. And anxiety is not a foundation for love. Now, when you sense anticipation rising, you ask yourself whether it feels light or tense. That question protects you. It keeps you from confusing longing with alignment. Your heart needs this right now because you may still wonder why this connection lingered as long as it did, why it didn't resolve quickly into clarity or closure. But some bonds linger because they are dismantling old patterns slowly. If they ended too quickly, you would have returned to familiar habits without noticing. This connection stayed long enough to rewire you. Long enough to teach you to sit with uncertainty without abandoning yourself. Long enough to show you the cost of waiting without direction. And long enough to change how you approach love forever. You may notice now that your inner clock feels different. You don't rush emotional milestones. You don't measure connection by how quickly it escalates. You are comfortable letting things unfold organically, watching how someone shows up over time. This patience is not fear-based. It is wisdom-based. It comes from knowing what happens when you give your heart to potential instead of reality. And because you know that now, you are more selective with your energy. That selectivity is not guardedness. It is respect for yourself. Listen carefully, because this bond also altered how you experience endings. Endings no longer feel like failures. They feel like information. They show you what was possible and what was not. They show you where growth occurred and where it stopped. This connection may not have ended with a clean narrative, but it ended with clarity settling into you. And clarity is a form of closure that does not require explanation from anyone else. It comes from within. Your heart needs this right now because you are standing at a point where you can look back without longing and look forward without fear. That balance is not accidental. It is the result of everything this connection taught you. You are no longer chasing outcomes. You are choosing experiences that feel stable in your body. You are choosing people who can meet your pace, not just your depth. That choice will change everything that comes next. Listen gently, because the universe does not repeat lessons unnecessarily. Once you integrate them, life moves you forward. You may notice that similar dynamics no longer attract you the same way. What once felt magnetic now feels draining. What once felt exciting now feels unstable. This shift is proof that the lesson worked. You are not stuck in the past. You are aligned with your future. You may also notice that your sense of self has strengthened. You trust yourself more. You don't second-guess your feelings as quickly. You don't dismiss discomfort as insecurity. You listen. And listening to yourself has become your greatest protection. This connection trained you to do that, even when it hurt. And because you learned it here, you won't need to learn it again the same way. Your heart needs this right now because it's easy to romanticize depth without acknowledging the growth it demands. This bond demanded maturity. It demanded restraint. It demanded that you choose yourself repeatedly, even when your heart wanted answers. And you did that, even imperfectly. That effort was not wasted. It shaped you into someone who can hold love without losing themselves. Take a breath here. Let this truth settle. This connection was written deep not to keep you bound to it, but to prepare you for something cleaner, steadier, and more mutual. You are no longer the version of yourself who confuses intensity with destiny. You are someone who understands that real love moves at a pace your nervous system can trust. And because of that, what comes next will not ask you to wait in confusion. It will meet you with clarity, presence, and a sense of timing that finally feels right. There is a quiet realization that arrives when you stop measuring this connection by what it became and start understanding it by what it refined inside you. This message is for you because at some point, without a dramatic moment or clear ending, you noticed that you were no longer the same person emotionally. Not hardened, not closed, but clearer. Clearer about what feels safe. Clearer about what drains you. Clearer about the difference between depth that heals and depth that destabilizes. This connection did not leave you confused forever. It trained you to recognize the moment confusion begins, and that awareness is something you carry forward now. Your heart needs this right now because growth like this often goes unnoticed until you realize you can no longer return to who you were before. You may notice that the way you hold memories of this bond has changed. They no longer pull you backward. They don't tempt you into longing or regret. Instead, they sit quietly, almost neutrally, like markers along a road you already walked. That neutrality is not indifference. It is integration. It means the emotions move through you instead of staying stuck. And that only happens when something has completed its inner work. This message is for you because many people believe closure comes from answers, apologies, or explanations. But real closure comes when your nervous system no longer reacts to the same trigger the same way. And that has happened for you here. Listen carefully, because this connection also reshaped how you experience emotional responsibility. Before, you may have taken on more than your share. You held space. You waited. You explained. You adjusted. You believed that love meant carrying weight together, even if you were the one doing most of the lifting. But now, something inside you has shifted. You are no longer willing to carry what belongs to someone else. You understand that emotional responsibility must be mutual or it becomes imbalance. This bond taught you that lesson not through words, but through experience. And experience leaves a deeper mark than advice ever could. Your heart needs this right now because you may still feel moments of softness when you think about them. Softness does not mean you are unfinished. It means you are human. What has changed is that softness no longer overrides your self-respect. You don't confuse compassion with self-sacrifice anymore. You can care without collapsing into old patterns. That is not something you forced. It is something that developed naturally as you grew through this connection. And that growth is permanent. You may notice now that when you imagine future love, your focus has shifted. You are not fantasizing about intensity or dramatic chemistry. You are imagining steadiness, ease, emotional presence that does not fluctuate unpredictably. You want conversations that land, not conversations that circle. You want commitment that feels embodied, not implied. This shift did not come from disappointment alone. It came from wisdom earned the hard way. This message is for you because your desires have matured, and that maturity will guide you towards something healthier. Listen gently, because this connection also taught you how to sit with unanswered questions without turning them inward. There may still be things you never fully understood. Things that were never explained clearly. Choices that never made complete sense. But you no longer need those answers to move forward. You stopped making their confusion mean something about your worth. And that is one of the most important transformations you could have made. You learned that uncertainty does not automatically reflect your value. It often reflects someone else's inability to choose clearly. Your heart needs this right now because you are stepping into a phase where discernment replaces attachment. Discernment does not reject love. It refines it. It asks whether something aligns with your emotional health, not just your emotional longing. And you are answering that question differently now. You no longer stay curious about situations that consistently make you anxious. You no longer invest deeply where consistency is missing. That change did not come from fear. It came from clarity. You may notice that your reactions are slower now. Not because you don't feel, but because you allow yourself to feel before responding. You don't rush to fix discomfort. You don't rush to smooth over misalignment. You give yourself time to notice what your body is saying. That pause is powerful. It protects you from repeating patterns. And it was learned here, inside a connection that demanded patience until patience turned into wisdom. Listen carefully, because this bond also altered how you understand destiny. Destiny no longer feels like something that sweeps you away. It feels like something that aligns with you. You are no longer waiting to be chosen by fate. You are choosing what matches your inner stability. That is a profound shift. It means you no longer romanticize struggle as proof of meaning. You understand now that meaning can be quiet. That love can feel calm. That connection can deepen without chaos. Your heart needs this right now because it's easy to look back and wonder if you could have done something differently. But that question assumes the goal was to make the connection last in form. The real goal was to let it do its work. And it did. It taught you restraint. It taught you self-trust. It taught you how to love without losing yourself. Those lessons required time. They required complexity. And they required you to feel deeply without guarantees. You did that. And you came out more grounded. You may also notice that your tolerance for emotional ambiguity has decreased significantly. You don't entertain mixed signals the way you once did. You don't excuse inconsistency as easily. Not because you are rigid, but because you are honest. Honesty with yourself has become your anchor. And that anchor keeps you from drifting into situations that look meaningful but feel unstable over time. Listen gently, because this connection was written deep enough to recalibrate your emotional compass. It didn't just show you what you want. It showed you what you can no longer accept. That clarity is not loss. It is refinement. It narrows your path so you don't keep wandering into experiences that teach you the same lesson again. You have learned it now. Fully. Your heart needs this right now because the next chapter of your life will require this level of awareness. You are no longer meant to stumble into love blindly. You are meant to recognize it by how safe it feels to be yourself. And because of what this bond taught you, you will. You will notice when presence is real. You will feel when availability is embodied. You will trust when something is aligned instead of waiting for proof through struggle. Take a breath here. Let this land. This connection was written deep not to keep you bound to the past, but to prepare you for a future where love does not cost you your peace. You are no longer the version of yourself who learns through emotional instability. You are the version who chooses from clarity. And that is the quiet power this bond left behind, one that will guide you long after the emotions have settled and the chapter has closed. There is a point when you recognize that this connection did not stay with you because it was meant to be relived, but because it rewired how you trust yourself. This message is for you because the deepest shift did not happen while the connection was active. It happened afterward, in the quiet spaces where you noticed how differently you respond to emotional situations now. You no longer rush to explain yourself. You no longer rush to justify your feelings. You no longer rush to prove that you are worthy of consistency. That change did not come from confidence alone. It came from having experienced what it feels like to give deeply and receive unevenly, and deciding, without drama, that you will not live that way again. Your heart needs this right now because self-trust is not built through affirmations. It is built through lived boundaries, especially the internal ones no one else can see. You may notice that your relationship with hope has changed. Hope used to feel like something you clung to, something you used to soften uncertainty. Now, hope feels quieter. More grounded. It no longer asks you to ignore red flags or tolerate emotional imbalance. It asks you to stay present with reality as it is. That is a mature form of hope, one that does not abandon discernment. This connection taught you that hopeful waiting without clarity drains you. And because you learned that here, you no longer confuse patience with loyalty. You understand now that loyalty to yourself must come first, or love becomes a place where you slowly disappear. Listen carefully, because this bond also changed how you experience emotional attachment. You still feel deeply. You still care. But you no longer attach through anxiety or anticipation. You attach through safety. Through consistency. Through how someone shows up over time. This shift may have surprised you. You may have wondered if you became less romantic or less open. But the truth is, you became more selective. Selectivity is not fear. It is wisdom earned through experience. And this connection earned you that wisdom the hard way. Your heart needs this right now because you may still feel moments where the memory of this bond stirs something tender. Tenderness does not mean unfinished business. It means the experience mattered. But notice this now, the tenderness does not destabilize you. It does not pull you backward. It does not make you question your present. It simply exists, without demanding anything from you. That is how you know integration has occurred. The emotion has found its place instead of controlling your direction. You may notice that you no longer feel compelled to analyze what went wrong or what could have been different. That urge has softened. Not because you lack curiosity, but because the answers no longer hold power over your future. You understand now that clarity does not always come from explanation. Sometimes it comes from repetition. From seeing the same pattern enough times to stop questioning it. This connection gave you that repetition. It showed you what happens when depth is not matched by availability. And once you truly see that, you do not need further proof. Listen gently, because this bond also shifted how you perceive emotional risk. Before, risk felt like something you had to take to experience depth. Now, risk feels like something you measure. You ask whether the risk aligns with your emotional capacity, your nervous system, your long-term peace. You no longer gamble your well-being on potential. That does not mean you avoid vulnerability. It means you choose it with people who can hold it responsibly. This understanding will protect you far more than caution ever could. Your heart needs this right now because you are entering a stage where your inner authority is stronger than your desire to be chosen. You no longer shape yourself to fit someone else's readiness. You no longer soften your needs to avoid discomfort. You understand that real connection does not require you to negotiate your core values. That realization may feel quiet, but it is one of the most powerful shifts a person can make. And it was forged here, through a connection that demanded you grow instead of stay comfortable. You may notice that your emotional reactions are now less extreme. Highs feel steadier. Lows feel more manageable. This is not emotional dullness. It is emotional regulation returning to balance. Your nervous system learned through this connection how exhausting unpredictability can be. And now, it seeks stability instinctively. That instinct is not boring. It is protective. And it will guide you toward connections that feel nourishing rather than consuming. Listen carefully, because this bond also redefined what intimacy means to you. Intimacy is no longer about sharing everything quickly. It is about feeling safe enough to be consistent. To be honest without fear of abandonment. To exist without walking on emotional eggshells. You now recognize that intimacy grows best in environments where clarity is present. And because you recognize that, you will no longer mistake emotional exposure for emotional security. Your heart needs this right now because you may still question whether this connection was worth the pain. But pain is not the measure of worth. Transformation is. And you have transformed. You are more grounded. More aware. More aligned with your emotional truth. Those changes will shape every connection that follows. This bond was not meant to be replicated. It was meant to complete a chapter of growth so you would not have to learn the same lesson again. You may also notice that your expectations of love have become simpler, not smaller. You want presence. You want consistency. You want emotional honesty. You want peace. These desires are not excessive. They are fundamental. And because they are fundamental, you will no longer compromise them for intensity or nostalgia. That is not closing your heart. It is protecting it wisely. Listen gently, because the universe does not bring deep connections randomly. It brings them when you are ready to be shaped by them. This connection arrived at a moment when you could grow through it, even if you did not realize it then. And now, as you step forward, you carry its lessons without carrying its weight. That is the sign that the bond has fulfilled its purpose. Take a breath here. Let this truth settle fully. You are no longer someone who learns through emotional imbalance. You are someone who chooses from self-trust. This connection was written deep enough to change how you love, but not to trap you in the past. It prepared you for a future where love feels steady, mutual, and emotionally safe. And because of what you learned here, you will recognize that future not by intensity, but by peace. There is a subtle shift that happens when you realize this connection did not just teach you about love, it taught you how to stand alone without feeling empty. This message is for you because earlier, being alone after something deep felt like loss, like something essential had been taken away. But now, aloneness feels different. It feels spacious. It feels honest. It feels like you are finally inhabiting yourself fully instead of leaning emotionally towards something unfinished. That change did not come from time passing. It came from understanding settling. Your heart needs this right now because the ability to be alone without feeling incomplete is one of the clearest signs that a connection has done its work inside you. You may notice that your inner dialogue has softened. You are no longer replaying moments, conversations, or possibilities the way you once did. Not because you suppressed them, but because they no longer carry unanswered urgency. They had their place. They taught you what they needed to teach you. And now, they rest. This is not forgetting. This is integration. This message is for you because many people believe healing means erasing the past. But real healing means the past no longer demands your attention to survive. It becomes part of your foundation, not your focus. Listen carefully, because this connection also changed how you experience desire. Desire used to feel restless, pulling you outward, making you search for reassurance or meaning in someone else's response. Now, desire feels quieter. More selective. It doesn't rush. It doesn't beg. It waits to be met. That shift is profound. It means you are no longer driven by lack. You are driven by alignment. And alignment does not chase. It recognizes. Your heart needs this right now because recognizing rather than chasing protects you from repeating cycles that once drained you. You may notice that when you think about love now, you don't feel the same urgency to label or define it. You are more curious about how it feels in your body over time. You notice whether you feel relaxed or tense, grounded or alert, open or guarded. These sensations guide you more than words ever did. This connection trained you to listen to your body's intelligence, because your body knew the truth before your mind was ready to accept it. That intelligence is now one of your greatest strengths. Listen gently, because this bond also reshaped how you deal with uncertainty. Uncertainty used to feel threatening, something that needed to be resolved quickly to restore peace. Now, uncertainty feels manageable. Not comfortable, but tolerable. You no longer rush to fill gaps with assumptions or hope. You let gaps exist long enough to reveal whether they close naturally or remain. This patience is not passive. It is observant. And observation saves you from investing where clarity never arrives. Your heart needs this right now because you may still be surprised by how calm you feel about things that once overwhelmed you. Situations that would have sent you spiraling now register as information. You feel them, acknowledge them, and move forward without losing yourself in them. That is emotional resilience, and it was forged here. It was forged by staying present through confusion long enough to learn what it costs you. And once you know the cost, you stop paying it blindly. You may notice that your empathy has matured. You still understand others deeply, but you no longer absorb their indecision as your responsibility. You can see someone struggle without stepping into it for them. This is not detachment. It is healthy separation. It allows you to care without carrying. This connection taught you that distinction because it required you to practice it repeatedly to survive emotionally. And now, that skill belongs to you permanently. Listen carefully, because this bond also clarified your relationship with choice. You understand now that not choosing is still a choice, one that affects everyone involved. You no longer romanticize indecision. You no longer excuse prolonged ambiguity as complexity. You see it for what it is, and you respond accordingly. This clarity did not make you harsh. It made you honest. And honesty is kinder than false hope. Your heart needs this right now because you are entering a phase where your life is no longer organized around unresolved connections. Your energy is returning to your own growth, your own direction, your own rhythm. You may notice that your days feel fuller, not because more is happening, but because you are more present in them. Presence is the opposite of waiting. And you are no longer waiting. You may also notice that you are less reactive to emotional triggers that once had power over you. Silence no longer feels like rejection. Distance no longer feels like abandonment. You have learned to differentiate between someone else's capacity and your own worth. That differentiation is freedom. And freedom allows love to approach you without fear, without pressure, without performance. Listen gently, because this connection also taught you how to let things end internally before they end externally. You stopped investing emotionally before the situation fully resolved, not out of bitterness, but out of self-preservation. That internal ending was the real closure. External circumstances may have lagged behind, but internally, you moved on when you stopped needing the situation to be different. That is a quiet kind of strength that most people never develop. Your heart needs this right now because you may still carry questions about what this connection meant in the larger story of your life. It meant exactly what it needed to mean. It brought you to this version of yourself. It refined your emotional intelligence. It recalibrated your expectations. It taught you how to love without abandoning yourself. And those lessons will echo through every relationship you build from here on. You may notice that your intuition now speaks more clearly. It doesn't shout. It doesn't panic. It simply signals. And you listen. That listening will guide you toward connections that feel mutual instead of magnetic, stable instead of intense, nourishing instead of consuming. This connection prepared you for that shift by showing you the difference firsthand. Listen carefully, because the depth of this bond was never meant to keep you tied to it indefinitely. Depth was the tool, not the destination. The destination was growth. And growth has happened. You can feel it in how you respond to life now. In how you choose peace over chaos. In how you trust yourself to walk away from what no longer fits without needing permission or validation. Your heart needs this right now because you are no longer someone who measures love by how much it hurts or how much it challenges you. You measure love by how much it supports your nervous system, how much it aligns with your values, how much it allows you to be fully yourself. That metric will save you years of confusion and pain. And it was earned here. Take a breath here. Let this land fully. This connection was written deep enough to shape you, but not to trap you. It carved out space inside you for a healthier, steadier kind of love to arrive. And because you have done this inner work, you will recognize that love not by how intensely it pulls you, but by how naturally it fits. That is the quiet promise left behind by a bond that changed you at your core.
Your heart needs this right now, because you may still feel moment of grief, not for the reason, but for the version of yourself who didn't yet know what you know now. The grief is gentle, it doesn't accuse, it simply acknowledges growth. You learn through experience that love is not proven by endurance. That connection is not validated by intensity alone, and that depth must be matched by consistency to feel safe. These realizations reshaped your emotional standards without hardening your heart. Listen gently, because this bond also shifted how you experience hope. Hope no longer asks you to wait indefinitely. It no longer asks you to suspend your life for potential. Hope now feels grounded in reality. It aligns with what is being shown to you, not what you wish would happen. The kind of hope does not disappoint you. It protects you, and it allows you to move forward without bitterness or regret. You may notice that your sense of identity has strengthened. You are less defined by who you are, with or what a connection might become. You feel more anchored in yourself. The anchoring is not independence for its own sake, itself, where it might lead, where it might not. Listen carefully, because this connection is also clarified your relationship with longing. Longing used to feel romantic, meaningful, even spiritual. Not longing feel like information. It tells you when something is missing, not when something is distant. You no longer confuse longing with love. You may notice that your body feels safer now. Safer to reset. I mean rest. Safer to be alone. Safer to imagine a future without needing an anchor into your specific person. The safety is not detachment. It is trust in yourself. You trust that you will not abandon yourself again for the sake of connection. Your heart need this right now, because the end of this chapter is not about what you lost. It is about what you gain. The ability to recognize, you gain the ability to feel when something is aligned. You gain the ability to pause without panic. You gain the ability to repeat itself. You may notice that your imagination is now oriented forward instead of backward. You are not repelling what was. You are not fantasizing about what could have been. You are not open to what is coming without needing to control of you. That openness is not naive. It is grounded. It comes from knowing you can handle whatever arrives without losing yourself. Your heart need this right now, because the next connection you enter will not feel like this one, and that is a good thing. It will feel calmer, clearness, less consuming, more mutual. You may even question it at first because it does not activate the same intensity, but your body will recognize it as safe, and safety will feel like home. Take a breath here. Let the truth settle fully. This connection are written deep enough to shape you, but not to define your future. It carves wisdom into you, will protect and guide you for the rest of your life. And because of that, you are no longer searching of love that can change you through your pain. You are open to love that meet you in clarity, steadiness, and peace. That is quite ending of a story that did not exactly what it was meant to do. Thank you guys. I hope you enjoy this story. If you enjoy, drop a like, drop a comment, and subscribe to my channel.